Hey guys, so in our last conversation, we talked about all the viruses and where they come from and what they do. And we also mentioned that in both Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 5, the viruses that you see in there are not actually viruses, but in fact parasites, and that they're completely different from what you see in the first Resident Evils, or even just what you would consider to be a zombie, because they are not zombies, they're just a parasite controlling them, right? One very interesting piece of detail, though, that we just completely didn't mention was that the Uroboros project that actually takes part in Resident Evil 5. See, Resident Evil 5, the Maginis, they're actually also parts of the Plagas parasite. They're being controlled. They're not really zombies. It's not a virus. However, during the game, if you guys remember, you can actually find this kind of blobs of black tentacle monsters called Uroboros, and they're not particularly similar to the Maginis or really any type of zombie or plagas, so I bet you guys were asking, well, what the hell is that? And where does it come into place in this conversation? So let me just go ahead and say that, yes, it is a virus. The Uroboros is a virus, it's not a parasite, so it has nothing to do with the parasite, and we're kind of going back into the progenitor virus and the T virus and those that infect the zombies in the first Resident Evils. But let me just give you a little background of where this happened. So, if you guys remember, I told you guys that, I don't know why I mispronounced that, that Wesker was collecting viruses and samples from Umbrella's branches in the world. So you see him like collecting the G virus in Resident Evil 2, you see him getting the T Veronica virus in the Spencer mansion, you see him collecting the Plagas in Resident Evil 4. So why was he doing this? Well, remember that he's trying to create a virus, the one Papa virus that he can then use to take over the world. So the Uroboros is pretty much that. It was his coup de grace, his main project, the one virus that was going to bring evolution to a whole new level and was going to make him the king of the world. That's what he wanted. Now, on the DLC for Resident Evil 5, I think it's called Lost in Nightmares, you go with Chris and Jill to another Spencer mansion, the second Spencer mansion, and you find out that Wesker is in there, and I don't really want to spoil the whole story, but just know that in the end of it, you do fight Wesker, and Jill, in quotes, dies. She kind of falls down a window, and you kind of expect her to be dead, but in reality, Wesker ends up collecting Jill, abducting her, and then treating her wounds and putting her in a cryogenic state. Now, this is why in Resident Evil 5 in the beginning, Chris is all like, oh, Jill, she's dead, or whatever, and then eventually when he does meet Jill while being controlled, he's like, what the fuck? That's what happened, right? Jill gets abducted, so he thinks she's dead. What ended up happening, though, in the background was that Wesker was trying to use her for experiments. Now, let's go back to the Uroboros virus. So, at this point, Wesker was getting close to finishing his project, the Uroboros virus, the virus that was going to end all viruses. The problem with the Uroboros virus was that it was too powerful, I guess, too poisonous for the human body. As soon as he would inject it into somebody, that somebody would die. And there just wouldn't be any time for the virus to attach to the host. It was too poisonous, too strong. So that was like he just couldn't progress any further. Now, while he had Jill in her cryogenic state, he realized something very peculiar about her body. He noticed that she still had a T-virus cell in her body. I mean, not a cell, but cell. She had the T-virus cells in her body. Now, if you guys remember, she got infected in Resident Evil 3 in by Nemesis, and she was vaccinated against it. Now, the vaccine was supposed to completely eliminate the T-virus from her body, but in reality just put it into a dormant state, what was assumed to be a permanently dormant state. But if you guys know, the thing about the viruses in really any Resident Evil game, and even movie most of the times, is that the viruses tend to react and grow and become powerful when the host happens to be either sleeping or passed out or dead. And I guess it makes sense for a virus to gain strength when the host is suppressed in some fashion. So I guess in a lot of ways it makes sense. You kill a target and then that target suddenly explodes and becomes a monster. It's always the case. So I guess the cryogenical state made the virus awaken. But the interesting part wasn't that. The interesting part was that as soon as the virus awoke, it died and it was just gone. So by analyzing the results, Wesker realized that Jill actually possessed amazing antibodies against the T-virus, that at this point she could probably fight the T-virus by herself, just her body fighting it, because her antibodies were that powerful. So what he tried to do was he injected the antibodies from Jill, the antibodies against the T-virus from Jill, into the Uroboros formula that he was working on, so that he was trying to make the Uroboros a little bit less powerful, less poisonous to the body, so that he could inject it on normal people and it would actually work. And it worked, and that's pretty much what the Uroboros virus is. Now, they don't actually tell us what the virus is compressed of. Like, they don't tell us what type of formulas and what specific types of DNA coatings or even what viruses in conjunction he used to create this virus. All they tell us is that it's part of the primogeniture formula. But that's it. There has to be some T virus in there because that's the only way in which the antibodies would work. But other than that, there's no clue. We don't really know what was in there. But the whole purpose of this was that, and this is what's really cool about this virus, was that it wasn't meant to be used on everyone. The Uroboros virus, so the way it worked is that the virus would look at your DNA strand, and if it was compatible, it would give you superhuman abilities. But if you were not compatible, it would just like transform you into this the black tentacle mass, and it would absorb all organic matter surrounding it and get bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's what you see in most sections of the game. I think you only fight like 3 Uroboros in the game in Resident Evil 5, and that's pretty much what happened. Those were subjects that the virus did not properly adhere to, so they were not supposed to be, I guess what's the word, I guess those subjects were not worthy, if you want to put it that way, because that's what Wesker wanted, of course. He wanted to, like, the best, the people with the best DNA to move forward with this new version of Earth that he was creating. And that's why, yeah, so you find a lot of those kind of failed formulas in the game. The sad part about Uroboros, though, is that you don't really get to see very well how the virus was supposed to evolve, because obviously the ones that you actually get to fight are the failed tests, so those are not, like, you don't get to see like how it would actually have looked like with a actual like successful merging, right? And now the one that we get to see is Albert Wesker. The problem is, and that's the last battle, of course, the problem with that is that Wesker already had different viruses in his body. Like, he was infected by a virus that was given to him by Birkin in, like, what, Resident Evil 1? And I think it's by the end of Resident Evil 1 that he injected himself. But and then he also had this other vaccine that he kept on injecting himself to keep the T virus in control in his body. So he had that going on inside of him, and then on top of that he had the Urovirus virus on his body. So like, it's hard to see if that really would have been what the human race would have become. Plus, you also have to consider the fact that the virus got a lot weaker during fire. Like, fire was like its actual weakness, and you get to fight him in the lava, so he was not as powerful as he otherwise would have been. So that's the sad part about Uroboros, but that's it. That's what Uroboros is. After that, obviously you kill Wesker, and that's it. You don't get to see the virus anymore. One thing that I'll let you guys know is that you actually get to see the virus again in Revelations 2. Now, I haven't actually played that part, and that's all I know. Like, I didn't actually spoil myself it. All I know is that, yes, it is in Revelations 2. So we will get to see how that applies. But that's another reason why I wanted to do this video today, because I want to give you guys a background on what the Uroboros is, since apparently we're going to see it in Revelations 2. In episode 3, I believe. So that's going to be interesting. Anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed this little commentation on the virus. If you guys have any other questions or whatever, then let me know. And thank you guys for watching. Have a nice day.